Welcome back to Wittenberg Academy Latin 4. We're recording today in really bad light, so I apologize for that, but we will not let it stop us. Lesson 100 is review lessons. You can read through that, but do look at page 197, where it lists the gerunds. Now these are, of course, the future passive participle, but they can be used in the oblique cases, as you can see here. Like we would use an infinitive or a participle in English to refer to a verbal act. Because remember, all participles are verbal adjectives, and every adjective in Latin can act as a noun. So in English, a gerund, so for example, in the genitive there you see of praising. So for example, we could say, of praising, we do quite a bit in church. We do quite a bit of praising in church. Or the dative, we do quite a bit for praising when we sing the Te Deum. You get the idea. So it's the verbal noun there, the gerund. And then the supine, we will get to the use of the supine, but it's another verbal noun. You can see there it only occurs, it has two forms there. It has a very limited use. We'll get to a couple of very specific uses for the supine later on, but it's another verbal noun. Lesson 101. The imperative mood. The imperative is the mood of commands and entreaties. There are two tenses. The present, which expects immediate fulfillment. It has only the second person singular and plural. So you make a command to someone, you do this. And the future, which looks toward fulfillment later and is used mainly in laws, maxims, and the like. It has the second and the third person singular and plural. In English, we have the imperative for the second person, and we have what's often called the jussive for the first and the second person. Let us pray. Let them eat cake. So that's a third person command or a first person command. The stems and the endings for the imperative. The imperative present and future belong to the present system. And the present endings are, so in the active, the singular is just the stem. So for laudo, for example, the stem is lauda, praise. And in the plural, it's simply laudate, y'all praise. And then in the future, second person singular and third person singular are the same, laudato. And in the second person plural, laudatote and laudanto. And then in the passive, you see laudare is the passive. May you be praised. And notice that can be confusing because that's the exact same form, the exact same spelling as the infinitive. And laudamini, the exact same spelling, of course, as the present indicative. And then laudator for the future passive imperative, and laudantor in the plural. Note to the note. The present active has the verb stem in the singular without any endings, as ama, rega, but dico, duco, facio, and fero, and their compounds have dic, duc, fac, and fer. You may want to add those as vocabulary forms, those irregular short imperatives. Negative commands. Negative commands are sometimes expressed in poetry by ne with the imperative, but they are usually expressed in prose by noli, the plural nolite, with the present infinitive. So noli pugnare, do not fight. That is literally, do not be willing to fight. So that's how it's done. And so there's your paradigm. You can see the forms all used there in each of the four conjugations. Lauda, mona, rega, audi, and in the passive plural, laudate, moneta, regata, audite. And the passive, laudare. So notice, laudare, monera, regera, audire. The passive, second person singular, looks exactly like the active infinitive. Now, the passive imperative is so rarely used that this is not going to throw you much. Likewise, laudamini is the same form as the second plural indicative. And note, the future imperative is used so very little that it will be omitted from further consideration. Wasn't that nice? So, on to sentences. Number 1. Noli extimare Pompei, hunc esse meam exercitum. So do not existimare Pompei. Do not be astonished, Pompey. This is my army. Existimare. Is that the right thing for existimare? Notice now that you're not going to get vocabulary at the beginning of the sentences. So we both may have to be looking up some words. And so this is, do not think, Pompey, that this is my army. Noli existimare Pompey. That this is my army. 2. Iuate me concilio si potestis. That's help me with a plan, if you were able. 3. Rem totum investiga cognosce perspica. So this whole matter, rem totum, that's in the accusative, so you know it's an object. Investigate, cognosca, learn about, perspice, look all the way around, really examine this whole matter. 4. 2. Quaeso festina a nos venire. You, quaeso can mean please. It literally means, I question, I beg. You, please, hasten to come to us. Festina is the imperative, hasten, and hasten to come to us. And so that idea of hastening is completed by an infinitive, venire. 5. Nolite fortunatum saepius temptare. Do not tempt fortune too often. Notice that's a comparative, not saipa, but saepius. So don't tempt fortune often, but don't tempt fortune too often. And 6. Libros tuos conserva et noli eos negligera. Negligera. There we go. So conserva libros tuos, guard, preserve your children, and do not neglect them. All right, that's it for lesson 101, the imperative mood. Pretty straightforward, not too many forms to learn there. And again, really it's the second person singular and plural active that will be used by far the most often of the imperatives.